Hello, everybody. Hello. How are you? I want to start today off with a simple survey, an audible survey. You could just kind of answer verbally or so. Who came here today specifically and only because there's no Cowboy game this afternoon? Okay, good. Who came here because local, state, national Republicans are doing their best to make this country unrecognizable? With the mean-spirited, hateful, targeted, unpatriotic policies that serve to only hurt people. Is that a fair representation of what's happening? Yes. So we always say everything starts somewhere. And today, let's call this the official, unofficial kickoff for the election season that comes next year. I can tell you that you've come to the right place, though. Denton Together, for those of you that may not know, Denton Together is a PAC. That's a good thing. It's not always a good thing, and there's some PACs that aren't trying to get people to vote and to raise voter registration turnout, but that's what we do. We focus on municipal elections within Denton County. I want to be clear about that, even though that's not what this event is today. This event is to shine the light on the fact that here we go, we're getting started. But Denton Together specifically has the belief that we would rather have a narrow focus and be really good at that than to try to be all things to all people and not be good at any of those things. And we're pretty good at it. In the last 4 years, we have helped support 18 winning elections in this county. Is that unbelievable? 18 winning. And several of those candidates / incumbents are in this room right now. That is our focus. We believe that local politics has the biggest impact on your lives. Obviously, things you see on CNN and MSNBC have a more notorious impact, but we feel like this local focus is where we want to stay, period. So that's what we do. Denton Together is a coalition. We don't run campaigns. We don't fundraise directly for candidates. What we do is try to be like the center spoke of a wheel, a coalition, to unite the county party and candidates and campaigns and precinct chairs and donors and volunteers, all of those things. We're a small group. We don't have hundreds of people, but I think we have the impact of hundreds of people, and today is a perfect example. This event is being filmed. It will be distributed hopefully sometime in the next, probably tonight or later tomorrow. Be on our webpage and on our Facebook page for anybody to share what you see here today. We support candidates that we believe, once elected, will govern with empathy and compassion and integrity. Is that a fair goal? And we believe that there is only one goal of electoral politics. If you've heard me ever speak, you know what it is. What is the one and only goal of electoral politics? Winning. And what's anything less than winning? Losing. And if you lose, you don't get to apply the policies and the theories and the strategies and go for laws and statutes because you didn't get there. So I like to keep the focus. This is not entertainment. It's entertaining, but I want to differentiate that as you see this event today and other events down the road. The goal is to support these candidates, to build infrastructure, to win. And that is ultimately the goal. I would like to encourage you to take pictures of these candidates throughout the day. You will see a QR code over here. I will just leave that for now, but it's important for us that you take a bunch of pictures, post it, tag Denton Together and the candidates, et cetera. And I would like to give a huge shout out of thanks to the UNT College Democrats president, AJ Perez, who you just heard from. And the College Democrats of UNT's team, like these people really do a good job. They work really hard. And I just want to say publicly, I appreciate that. And finally, and only because I need them, I want to thank the tech team up there. Thank you. You guys are doing a great job. Nobody thanks the tech team ever, so I think it's a good move. And with that, and with no further ado, let's get this event started. First event will be the debate for the State Attorney General primary. We'll take a short 15-minute break. In the middle, during that break, when we change over the stage, Mayor Curtis Cornelius of Little Elm will lead a discussion on the importance of local elections, why you're here, what we should be focusing in on, et cetera. But for now, I'd like to get a warm welcome for our moderator, Mr. Jason Whiteley of WFAA, Senator Nathan Johnson, and former Mayor of Galveston, Mr. Joe Jaworski. Welcome them in.
On this microphone? There it is. All right. You gonna check the mics before you're going, or does everyone feel confident with it? Guys, thanks for being here today. I know you took time out of the Sunday to make the trip up from Houston, Galveston, and like me, from the 214, so definitely thanks for making the trip up here, guys. So you know the rules. We've talked about the rules. We're going to start with our first question today to Senator Johnson. Both of you have said the Attorney General's office needs reform after recent scandals. There's no secret there what you guys think about that. Senator, you've argued that you'd restore faith and confidence and emphasize legal professionalism. But can you tell us what immediate structural changes that you would make on day one?
Yeah, day one, the first thing I would do is send, and I'm talking about like a day or two after the election, I'd send a memo out to every Attorney General office employee and say, I value your institutional knowledge and your expertise, and I encourage you to reapply if you're here for some reason other than ideology. If you're here to uphold the law, if you're here to make life in Texas better, if you're here to hold price gougers accountable, if you're here to work with district attorneys and the federal government to protect the environment, to protect consumers, to make markets work, if you're here to do all those things, if you're here to make sure that child support gets paid, then please stay on. And if you have an ideological bent that aligns with Ken Paxton, I hear that ICE is accepting applications. I encourage you to apply there. That's day one. We are going to get the best and the brightest attorneys in the state of Texas. There is a problem right now in the Attorney General's office. When you talk to people there, I've talked to attorneys who've left Ken Paxton's office because they couldn't take it. They just wanted to do their job as good lawyers. And what we have right now in the Attorney General's office is a litmus test for ideology. That would go out the door. And they can't get good attorneys anymore. You are going to see some of the finest legal minds in Texas who want to care about what they do every night when they go to bed and every morning when they wake up, taking on major cases, which brings me to another structural reform. There are times when an attorney general throughout Texas needs outside counsel, but not the way Ken Paxton has used outside counsel. You have good attorneys at the Attorney General's office. They don't need a 9-figure paycheck on a contingency fee to go after Google. I might hire some outside lawyers, but we need good lawyers in the office doing the right thing. Secondly, stop using it for political persecution of opponents or groups that you think you can grab headlines for to make Donald Trump happy. You are here to uphold the law, and we are at a point right now where the constitutional foundations of this country are crumbling. We need people who will administer the rule of law. I got 5 seconds left, so I say thank you, UNT Dems, and thank you, Denton Together, for having us here.
Senator, for clarification, would everyone have to reapply for their jobs?
Everyone.
Everyone would. Mayor, you've called for integrity and said you'll return power to the people if elected. What specific transparency oversight mechanisms would you implement there?
Well, first thing I'd like to make sure this microphone's on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, first I'd like to say thank you, Jason. I'd like to say thank you, Ira. And I'd like to say thank you, Denton Together, for hosting this event. My name is Joe Jaworski. I'm a third-generation Texas lawyer, a former mayor of Galveston, and I'm the grandson of a Texan who prosecuted World War II Nazis. Yeah. He also prosecuted the President of the United States of America, Richard Nixon. Who's in the White House right now, and you combine what my grandfather Leon Jaworski did,
Use that one there.
What's old is new again. Now, what I mean by that is we are here because we believe justice should not be for sale. And when Ken Paxton, the scoundrel in charge of the Office of Attorney General, leaves, and I take the oath of office in 2027, I will lead with integrity, not indictments. And I will push back against the MAGA agenda. I will go face to face, nose to nose, Jason, with the bullies. Now look, Denton Together, I want to say this. This race, and I'm talking about this primary race against Nathan Johnson, is about the heart and soul of who we are as Texans and who we are as Democrats. By God, we are Texas Democrats. And Jason, if you're asking about transparency, that is a great way to start. My view is the first week we are going to have no less than 5 lawsuits reversed from what Ken Paxton has done. It's unforgivable what he's done to the Dreamers in Texas. We'll reverse the pleadings and support the Texas DREAM Act. It's outrageous what he's done to support Donald Trump in his illegal redistricting map. Wherever that lawsuit may be, we will reverse the pleadings. And most importantly, it may be an ideal time to have an open house at the Attorney General so that we can see the damage he's done and begin the reversal immediately.
We're going to share mics just for a moment here. The senator reminded me in my haste to get things going here. I did skip over opening statements, so I'm going to back up here and let the senator give his opening statements, and the questions will resume momentarily here.
I figure you're in charge, Jason, but I'd love to do an opening statement.
Please.
Thank you. Opening statement. First of all, I think we need to appreciate what we're looking at here. The Attorney General's office is one of the most consequential offices in all of state government, and as Texas has such a huge role in the nation, it's one of the most consequential offices in the entire country. It has a $1.34 billion budget. It has 4,000 employees and 800 lawyers. It is the state's lawyer, it is the people's lawyer, but it is also an engine of policy at the state level and at the federal level. And it has been abused and debased and wasted. I sat through an impeachment trial. I know it's been abused and debased and wasted, and I will not watch it happen again. It's critically important that we now take that office as Democrats. It would be the first time since 1990 that a Democrat has held this office. It will be the first time in more than 3 decades that any Democrat has broken through. So you need to look when you're making your decision in this primary election. You got 2 questions. Who can beat the Republicans? And who can deliver when they're in office? And if you go through my 8 years in public office, you will see that I have won every time, and that I have flipped a 30-plus year Republican seat, and that I have used more money than anybody else to get other Democrats elected, and that while in office, I've passed 134 bills across 4 sessions. And I've done it while calling the Republicans dogs on a leash for doing Trump's redistricting, while telling the Republicans that they're using border money to get Greg Abbott reelected, while attacking them for their cruel and backwards abortion policies, but having enough of their respect to work with them to pass a law that got 350,000 working low-income people health insurance for the first time, that prevent babies from going deaf, that prevent teenagers from committing suicide, that provide power to nursing homes and water stations. I think it's important that once we get there, we can deliver. And when I get to the Attorney General's office, it won't be talk anymore. It won't be headlines. We will be suing the federal government. Paxton has sued the Biden administration 106 times, 0 times against Trump, not for the $700 million that Trump has taken from our bilingual education programs, the $300 million he's taken from solar power, the force feeding of his policies to universities. All of these, it's the Democratic Attorney General of this country that are slowing Trump down. We've got to have someone experienced and powerful and persuasive in government that can shut that down at the same time as we run this office the way it's supposed to be run. I can do it. I want to work with you to get this office flipped to Democrat and every office flipped to Democrat, because this is the cycle. The wind is at our backs. Let's take advantage of it. It's time to turn Texas blue.
Senator, thank you. Mayor, I asked you a question, but I do want to give you time for opening statements as well, sir.
Jason, thank you so much. Well, Denton, together, this is an important opportunity for you to see deep contrast between your 2 Democratic candidates for the nomination. The Attorney General's office will be an open race. That is significant when you combine it with the fact that Donald Trump is about to have a very ugly midterm. And what I'd like to point out is that there is only one fighter on this stage that you can count on. When I was Galveston mayor, I stood 10 toes down against the racists and the for-profit landlords who sought to recall me and undo my mayoralship because I was standing for the rebuilding of public housing after Hurricane Ike. This was something that I think is a signal moment that you should consider, because instead of worrying about whether I was going to be reelected, I was worrying about my constituents and damn the torpedoes. That's what leadership is required right now. Nathan Johnson when he had the opportunity to sit as a juror before Ken Paxton, he voted to acquit Ken Paxton on 2 charges that the House impeached him on. Very clearly, all he had to do was find, yes, this happened, and he could impeach Paxton. Why would you give any comfort to that scoundrel? The second thing I'd like to point out, since we're on a college campus, Jason, is Senate Bill 2972. Mr. Johnson knows about this because he voted for it. He was one of 2 Democrats who joined all Republicans to pass the Campus Security Act, which may as well be called the Suppression of Free Speech Act. This was something that the students at University of Texas, Dallas sued, and I'm so proud of them because this is no time to give comfort to the MAGA agenda that we need to suppress speech. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, Denton together, a Reagan appointee federal judge found Mr. Johnson's law to be unconstitutional. Now, the students can have meetings. Now, the students can gather after 10 p.m. because you got to know, Jason, the First Amendment does not go to bed at 10 p.m. like the law he passed does want it to be.
You get 60 seconds to respond to it.
Thank you. This is exactly what is the attack I would expect from a Republican. This person is running to be the Attorney General, and he just told you that if I find that the prosecution has failed to meet its burden, I should vote to convict anyway. I voted to convict Ken Paxton 14 times. There is no Democrat that voted to convict Ken Paxton 16 out of 16 times. 1 count sends that guy out of office. We now have someone who wants to be the Attorney General telling me I should set aside my role as a juror and just vote to convict no matter what it was. I voted to convict 14 times. They tried to kick me off the jury because they knew I was rallying people to convict Ken Paxton because he's a crook. As for 2972, that's a really difficult issue. The Freedom Caucus right wing voted the way that Joe Jaworski's telling you I should have voted. Gina Hinojosa, our nominee for governor, and James Tallarico voted the way I did. So if you're looking for a vote that separates true Democrats from true Democrats, try not to pick one that splits progressive Democrats down the middle. It's complex, and I'll spend a happy half hour with you talking about that bill. But I voted to uphold free speech of students and preserve the educational environment, and I stand by my vote.
You guys both laid this out, but let me ask you this question. I think you do want to respond, but let me ask you this question. Senator, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to you in a moment, Mayor. People here just heard good clash between 2 Democrats, but how would you say, policy-wise, you're most different from your opponent?
I don't know my opponent's policies. I could read Facebook a lot and get some idea. I've been in office. It's going to be pretty easy to get a good idea of what my policies are. I've emphasized infrastructure, and by that I mean physical and social. I've been the Democrats' lead voice on the grid, and I was the Democrats' lead voice to bring Medicaid expansion to Texas, which failed, so I worked on getting 350,000 people health insurance anyway. I've revised tax policy. I have worked on water. I've worked on the environment. I'm the only legislator to pass any clean air legislation in the last decade. So anywhere that you're looking that we are not making progress under Republican leadership, I've been there finding ways for a Democrat to move forward. As far as policy provisions about what the Republicans are doing, I have been one of their most outspoken critics, while also being able to achieve things within the legislative environment that we do have.
Same question, Mayor. We know a little bit more about him since he's in the legislature. How are you different?
Well, first off, I tell the truth, okay? Senator Johnson, I heard you just say no Democrat voted to convict Paxton on all the counts. That's just not true. You know that Roland Gutierrez voted on every single count. He's your colleague, and you should know that. The other thing I want to point out, Jason, is that Senate Bill 2972, just on Election Day, got appealed by Ken Paxton. Now, this is your law you voted for, so if you were to be Attorney General, what would be your position on the appeal?
Are you interviewing me?
No, I'm actually answering the question that Jason asked, the difference of our policies. I tell the truth. Now look, this is a real critical race. The Attorney General is an individual executive office. And so I have held a mayoral position in Galveston that certainly is subject to city council as well. But on the question, Jason, of housing, when a disaster like Hurricane Ike damaged Galveston, it was over a 100-year storm, Housing and Urban Development looks to the mayor and the mayor alone to accomplish the objectives of the disaster funds we got. Galveston got close to $1 billion, Denton, together. And let me tell you, when HUD called and said, now, Mayor, you can spend this money on the wastewater treatment plant, on the fire station, on the airport, all these things, but don't forget, you have to build public housing back. When I was mayor, I said building apartments back, Jason, wasn't good enough. Here's what you need to know about Joe. When I was mayor, I went big, and I took a page out of a great Texas Democrat, Henry C. Snellis's book, and he knew that mixed income development, tripling the number, so doctors and lawyers, teachers and nurses and firemen, and income-eligible working poor could all come home. That's what I want you to know about my record.
Let's zoom back in on the Office of the Attorney General. Senator, let me ask you this one. Is there a current state law on the books that you would not defend if it was challenged in court?
I think there's probably a number of them. If I went through a list, I don't have one in front of me. Let me just first on the telling the truth thing. If somebody looks to you and says the jury acquitted on 2 counts, and they don't mention that the jury convicted on 14 counts, are they telling you the truth? Now, what laws would I not defend? I don't defend unconstitutional laws. We had a number of them passed over the years. There's questions on constitutionality. I wouldn't defend the maps. I'll tell you that. I think those are unconstitutional. I think Senate Bill 2880 in the regular session, and it became Senate Bill 6 and 7 through our various special sessions. That's a bill that was designed to punish people who import abortion-inducing drugs in Texas for whatever purpose they might have. I think that has unconstitutional provisions. We've got a whole host of them. And I think the underlying point here is what's the role of the Attorney General if there's a law that you don't like, right? I mean, we are not the legislature. We are not the governor, but we do have discretion, and I have legal discretion to interpret what is constitutional and what is not. I do not defend unconstitutional laws. I would not have been complicit as Ken Paxton was when Donald Trump wiped out 24 years of in-state tuition for undocumented kids who got good grades in high school. But I can't go invalidate a law. At the same time, I've got a lot of things to do. And some law that is really kind of harassing and bad, it's probably not going to be top priority in my office.
Mayor, same question.
Jason, thank you for that. You know, my wife and I, we've been married 35 years, and we live in Galveston, Texas. Just Friday, Jason, the scoundrel in office, Ken Paxton, sued the Galveston Independent School District, where my wife and I pay taxes on our homestead so that the children can be educated. It's a historic independent school district, been graduating community leaders for a century and a half. And you know, Paxton sued the school district because it hasn't hung the framed 10 Commandments that Attorney General candidate on the Republican side, Mays Middleton, donated to the school district. So first off, whatever the status of the 10 Commandments law, Jason, I understand the Constitution and I understand Supreme Court precedent. So I will take the position that there is, in fact, a separation of church and state. Another one that is just really awful is that scoundrel, Ken Paxton, colluded with Pam Bondi, who has no business being Attorney General up in Washington, but Donald Trump likes her, so there you have it. And Pam Bondi filed suit against the Texas DREAM Act, a brilliant piece of bipartisan education policy in Texas that was brought to us by Rick Noriega from the Houston area. It's been the law for 25 years, and even the supermajority Republican legislature that was in the 89th supported the Texas DREAM Act because some fool every 2 years always tries to file a bill to undo it. So the policy continues, and then what happens? In June, Pam Bondi sues in the Northern District of Texas, and Ken Paxton, Jason, doesn't even not answer. He says, "Where do I sign?" And he signs a consent agreement. So the other case that I would immediately reverse is I would take a position supporting our dreamers, supporting in-state tuition to these fine people that wish to become citizens.
Mayor, let me stick with you for a moment here, too, and talk about the energy grid and environment and disaster response as well. You said the Attorney General's office should help prevent catastrophes, floods, winter storm outages, even Uvalde-style massacres like we saw a few years ago. What specific legal remedies or enforcement actions would you pursue against utilities, regulators, or contractors after a major failure?
Right. Ken Paxton and the Attorney General's office are often very quiet when utility companies like CenterPoint or Oncor go before the PUC and ask for a rate hike. Well, in the Houston paper just this morning, they talk about, well, another $1.2 billion rate hike from Tropical Storm Beryl is going to be paid over 15 years. And the newspaper reported, Jason, but it was $100 million less than what they wanted. 1.2 billion instead of 1.3 billion. The Attorney General was not reported in this article as taking a position on it. And what I would say is, since we all know affordability and economics are a big issue right now in Texas politics and in American politics, I think Democrats in Texas, being Texas Democrats, ought to talk about affordability and economics. And so I've made a short list in my phone, and I'm reading it a lot to get acquainted with really how we are right now, which is, what are ways the Attorney General could put money in your pocket? I mean, we can certainly, Jason, start with child support collections, do a better job, make sure the money gets to single conservator parents first and foremost. But when it comes to your utility bill, which never seems to go down, it only seems to go up, I would like to see the Attorney General's office take more of a consumer protection stance when it comes to the PUC and all these carriers that are trying to raise your rates. I'd say the same thing about insurance companies. You know, the Department of Insurance is a Abbott appointment. There was a bill some time ago to make it elected so that we could all have something to say about it. But I'd like to see the Attorney General be on the side of the ratepayer and the consumer rather than the insurance company.
Senator, let me ask you the same topic or two. Given your legislative work on the grid and utilities, are there statutory gaps that you would prioritize closing through litigation or through rulemaking?
I think it's important to recognize that much of what happens in statute is the subject of the statutory body, the legislative branch of government. The Attorney General doesn't get in and craft statutes. The Attorney General, however, can identify statutory gaps, work with the legislature to see that those are filled. In the case of utilities and rate hikes, there is another agency called the Public Utility Commission that is charged with that. The Attorney General can issue legal opinions. The Attorney General should issue legal opinions. But so much of the legislation that has to do with the grid is new. And I know because I've been involved in drafting it. It has yet to work its way through the courts, the regulatory agencies, and the Attorney General's office is going to have the task of helping agencies and helping private parties and helping utilities interpret what those statutes mean. And so I think the role of the Attorney General is partly to clarify things, to make sure that the mechanisms do operate, that people aren't in a fog when they go before the Public Utility Commission. The Public Utility Commission understands exactly what it means. But I don't want to promise something from the Office of Attorney General that it cannot deliver if there is something illegal happening, and I can prove it. I will go after anybody. I'll go after the Trump administration, the Biden administration, Oncor, CenterPoint, Albertsons, whoever is doing something wrong. But I'm not going to tell you, hey, I'm going to bring down your electricity prices just by filing lawsuits. I think the role actually is going to be to make sure that the process works much more effectively than it is right now. Again, if someone's breaking the rules, that will not be tolerated. And I'll have good lawyers and they will shut it down. But I also think it's important to have a good relationship with the legislature so that you can work to fill those statutory gaps. And as markets change, as the electricity world changes, the law has to change with it, and the Attorney General should work to make sure that it's adequate.
You guys have both mentioned how the office should balance politics with being an independent entity as well. Senator, let me ask you, how do you think the office should balance politics and independent legal judgment when state policy clashes with federal policy?
Well, it's similar to state policy clashing with local government, and I think we've had a horrific relationship with the federal government. It's been absolutely antagonistic when there's a Democratic president, and it's been completely complicit, supine, laying on its back when it's Donald Trump or a Republican president. I think we need to take what actually serves people the best. I personally went against the Biden administration's Medicaid and Medicare services reforms that were going to wipe out our indigent care hospitals. But I don't think that Trump's actions in health care are going to do any good to keep our hospitals open. So the Attorney General has to set aside a lot of the politics and make sure that people actually get their child support payments, that Google can't just eat us for breakfast every morning. And if you're so caught up with passing or filing lawsuits that get headlines, and that's really what Paxton has done, he files lawsuits in order to get headlines, and then they kind of fizzle away. You got to think about a lawsuit before you file it, plan to win it, and not settle for a small pittance slap on the wrist and you get your little headline and say, I won. You need changes in behavior by market participants. And so that's why I don't believe in bringing in a bunch of outside counsel that want a quick payday. I want good lawyers that are interested in winning, not in demonstrating that they are in this party or that party. But you can bet that having a Democrat in the office is going to be that check and balance that is missing. So to the extent that being a check and balance is in the Constitution is partisan, to the extent that means being a Democrat, I'm a Democrat.
Mayor, same question. If elected, how would you balance politics and independent legal judgment that the office would have?
Jason, I just heard Nathan Johnson say, he doesn't want to make promises he can't keep. Listen, anybody who knows anything about hiring a lawyer or anybody who knows anything about being a lawyer knows you can't promise an outcome to your client, but you can sure as hell fight for them. And I ask you folks, Denton together, when was the last time you felt the Attorney General was fighting for you? All right, what we want is an Attorney General that is on the side of the people, not on the side of the politics. So you ask a great question, Jason. The question of politics and all that, let it go. Let the legislature, because we've seen the back and forth in Nathan's Senate, and we've seen the House, and the House right now is showing, I think, some real strength when they used their one quorum breaking privilege to bring a national solution to this redistricting nightmare. Gavin Newsom was absolutely welcome to come to Houston and do a victory lap. Very proud of our Texas House. And let me say this, the Attorney General could also have something along those lines if you elect a Democrat. If you elect Joe Jaworski to be your Attorney General, what you're going to see is someone who is a proven fighter in court and in the public circle as mayor. I was beaten, I was threatened, I was humiliated, but never undaunted, okay? And so what happened in Galveston is a great story, and it's one I like to tell because that housing got built, and it is now a beautiful 3-neighborhood mixed income solution where children trick or treat, where families barbecue, where people are safe, and it's a real success story. I'd like to bring that same story, that same conclusion to the Office of Attorney General, where you feel like the child support is collected and delivered on time, and you've got an advocate for the things that matter most, our freedoms.
Can you respond at all to any of it?
Nah.
Next question's for you, Senator. If you could pass one statute to help the Attorney General's office do its job better, is there one you would pass?
I don't think it's a matter of statute, Jason. I think it's a matter of willpower and leadership. I think it has most of the tools that it needs to do what it needs to do. In particular, we've got anti-competition and antitrust laws. We've got anti-corruption laws. And as we go through statute by statute and case by case in the process, on the job, we're going to find stuff, and I'll go to the legislature. But really, there's not like a magic bill that would have turned Ken Paxton into a good attorney general. He's a nightmare. We need somebody who actually is going to sit down and figure out how do we use the laws that we have today to get the results that we need to get. So no, I wouldn't. I don't think a bill is the problem. I think it's political will and leadership.
Is there a statute, Mayor, that you'd pass to help the AG's office do its job better?
Jason, I think that the Attorney General probably is wasting a lot of money right now on frivolous lawsuits like the one I told Denton together here, suing Galveston over the 10 Commandments. There's no statute that I'd like to see other than perhaps hands-off localities. And you might imagine as a mayor, I feel very strongly that if people go to the polls to elect mayors and council members and county commissioners and school district trustees, let them do their job. If they don't, you can obviously at the next election do something about it, the voters can. But there needs to be maybe a statute, Jason, to answer your question, that says something about hands-off localities. Now, trust me, that's not going to pass in the current legislative partisan breakdown, but I believe in 2026, we could see Democrats leading in both chambers and 1 or 2 or 3 state offices. I'd like to see a statute that says, Attorney General, hands off, mind your own business, go to court like you're supposed to, talk to the youth, go to the law schools, do something about the immigration nightmare that Congress simply won't address, but hands off city councils, county commissions, and school districts.
You guys have both talked about different issues, and I've asked about them as well too, but Senator, let's start with you. State your top 2 priorities as Attorney General, and can you tell us a specific metric that you'd publish a year in to show progress of that?
Specific, I don't know how to measure reversing stupid policy. I think Joe and I would agree that one of the fundamental things new leadership in the Attorney General office has to do is stop using the office for political persecution and backwards headlines. I don't know how to count that other than I'm not going to do it. As for affirmative policies, I think that the cost of living, the runaway prices we have, the crap quality of everything, the crap service everywhere is a result of 50 years of neglect of market anti-competitive practices acts and consumer protection. The federal government has pulled back on consumer protection, has all but abandoned antitrust law. One of my priorities will be to make markets work. This is not some kind of lefty thing. We have good laws on the books. Competition works when it's a competitive market. I will be enforcing the marketplace rules to make sure that businesses compete so that we do have choices, so that we do have competitive products, so that we do have low prices. How do we measure that? I think we're going to measure it when we see more people providing services, when we see small businesses able to compete and succeed. So when we look at that after a year, we will look at the number of lawsuits I haven't filed and the lawsuits that I have filed, because I want market players to know what the deal is before we get going. And if you cross us, I will be coming after you. A second thing that I want to do is address the concern that we have. And Democrats get beat up on public safety all the time. The Attorney General isn't a prosecutor in property or violent crimes. But the Attorney General certainly can be a leader in the area of public safety. And instead of going after local district attorneys and local law enforcement and all this pretend stuff about public safety, but actually use that office to coordinate the efforts from district attorneys around the state of Texas to actually increase public safety through all sorts of measures. They do this in Nevada. They do this in North Carolina. I think the state of Texas needs an attorney general who will actually lead in the area of public safety, in the area of public corruption, in the area of consumer protection and market competition.
Senator, is there a consumer category you would focus on, or a market player you would focus on?
There's a few consumer categories, yeah. Big tech is just running rampant. And actually, if we're honest, and I think it's important to be honest, Ken Paxton has some attorneys who've done a good job going after Google. I'm interested if they have some ideological problems with sticking around. I'd go after big tech. I would be looking at apartments. I'd be looking at grocery stores. I'd be looking at pharmacy benefit managers. The people who manufacture the saline bags that they only manufacture in Puerto Rico, so when there's a hurricane, we don't have any. There's all sorts of stuff. Man, we're going to be busy.
Mayor, same question there for you. Top 2 priorities, if elected, and what is the metric that you would publish or show that you've achieved those?
Sure. Well, there's 2 things that they can't stop me from doing as Attorney General. And let me first say, Jason, it's amazing to consider, Ken Paxton was so bad for so long, and I do want to agree with Nathan that the culture war lawsuits that never seem to end, and, all you really hear is lawsuit filed, injunction obtained, and then you never really hear much more about it. And what could make Ken Paxton worse than just Ken Paxton? Ken Paxton in office running for the U.S. Senate. And so what I said in the article that the Galveston Daily News published, I was like, look, Ken Paxton needs to stop campaigning for the United States Senate in Galveston County District Court. So let me just say, I agree with that. Here's 2 things I'd love to do, Jason, that I don't think anyone could stop me from doing, and it would benefit people greatly. Improve the child support collection and delivery system. Absolutely. There are so many people being left hung out to dry. I'm sorry, he's moved to Maryland. We can't touch him. I actually have worked for decades on dockets, Jason, as a lawyer and a mediator, that are so overwhelmed by numbers. And I know what it looks like when people are simply understaffed. I think that would describe the Office of Attorney General. Because again, Ken Paxton is suing school districts, and he's suing schools to stop pride flags, and he's suing cities to take away rainbow flags. Like, that's really Texas's big issue. So you can count on child collection support and reform when I'm Attorney General. The second thing, it would be my great pleasure to finally, once and for all, enforce a law that came from Dallas, and it's in the Texas Election Code and the Education Code, and it says every high school principal in every school in Texas, public, private, charter, religious, must, it's mandatory, Jason, offer registration to the senior class twice a year. The idea being that you're going to turn 18 either in the fall or the spring. 400,000 students graduate from our public schools every May. Over a 4-year Attorney General term, 1.2 million new voters. I would like to be the one to enforce that.
Senator, if you end up getting the nomination, you'll face one of 4 Republicans running for the same office. 2 of your colleagues. There's Joan Huffman from Houston, Mays Middleton from Galveston, Aaron Wrights from Austin, and then Chip Roy also from Austin. Who would you like to run against, and what do you expect the challenges of that campaign to be?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. They all just do what they're told. They really do. It's actually quite sad to be in the legislature and watch the Republicans just voting. I mean, some of them actually believe this crap. Others are just don't believe it, but they're all doing what they're told. I don't like what they represent. I think what you're likely to see is Ken Paxton 2.0. They're taking orders from the same think tanks in Washington, D.C. They're doing what Trump says. They're doing what Abbott says. You're just going to see obedience and hysteria. I think some might be easier to beat than others, but frankly, I think in this election cycle, it's really more of a question about the election cycle. I think we can beat any one of them. 2 of my colleagues actually did vote to acquit Ken Paxton, in stark contrast to the 14 times I voted to convict. The other 2, I think Aaron Wrights has said you should use the Attorney General's office to advance the MAGA agenda. That's a quote. I mean, if you're in MAGA, you shouldn't use the Attorney General's office to advance the MAGA agenda. We have a constitutional foundation in this country. MAGA's not part of it. Chip Roy himself endorsed by Ted Cruz. Need we say more? So look, we got 2 people who voted to acquit Paxton, 1 endorsed by him and 1 endorsed by Cruz. They're all going to do what they're told. Let's just beat them.
Mayor, same question. Of the 4, who would you like to run against, and what do you expect the challenges of that campaign to be?
Well, I'm confident there's going to be a runoff. There's 4 Republicans now. Nothing stops a 5th one from coming. But Mays Middleton, who's my senator in Galveston, his announcement was, I got $10 million, says I'm going to be the next Attorney General. Then, of course, Aaron Wrights, who came on saying, I'm going to be the woke's worst nightmare, and who's gotten his first $250,000 check from Tim Dunn and the endorsement of Ken Paxton, who he worked for. And then, of course, Chip Roy, who has gotten Ted Cruz's endorsement because Roy used to work for Ted Cruz. He also worked for Paxton. Joan Huffman, probably would be the least worst, but if MAGA isn't going to nominate Eva Guzman, they're not going to nominate Joan Huffman. So to answer your question, honestly, it doesn't matter what I think. The Republican voters who I have in the base, who I have very little to do with or anything in common, are going to decide. But, I bet it's going to be a runoff between Mays Middleton and Chip Roy. So let me just stop right there. That's going to be my forecast, okay?
All right, guys, it's already that time, though. Let's talk about closing statements here. I let him go first for opening statements. Senator, I'll let you go first to close.
Well, again, thank you all for attending and being interested in this. I think it's obviously a critically important time for our country, and we say every cycle is the most important election of our lifetime, but I think it may be one of the most important moments of our lifetime. I think we're at the close of a historical cycle, and things are breaking down, and they were bound to break down, and some of the things should break down. But the nation has elected at the state and federal level a team of destroyers, and they're really, really good at destroying, and they don't have anything in their yard except a wrecking ball. Who's going to build this place up? And while they're continuing to smash stuff, who's going to hold up the ceiling so it doesn't fall on our heads? And that's attorneys general. And the 23 Democratic attorneys general across this nation are the only ones who have had any success at slowing Trump down, at kicking his National Guard out of Oregon, at kicking the National Guard out of Chicago, at stopping the tariffs, hopefully. It's critically important that we elect a Democrat into the Attorney General's office just to preserve our constitutional foundations and all the other good things that both I and Joe have talked about here. But I want to talk about the whole slate. In a really bad year, we lose by 12. In a really good year, we lose by 3. And I'm tired of losing. And what can make the difference this cycle, and what made the difference in North Texas in 2018, where we killed it, we elected 9 of the 12 new House reps from the Democratic side came from North Texas. 2 of the new state senators on the Democratic side, me and Beverly Powell, came from North Texas. What made it happen was the understanding that we got a bunch of really good candidates. And so people turned out in droves, and independents, instead of breaking Republican, they broke Democrat. Democrats surged, independents came over, disaffected Republicans came over. We've got going to have a great governor candidate. We are going to have a great U.S. Senate candidate. We are going to have a great attorney general candidate, hopefully comptroller and all the rest. That should drive us out, put us over the top. Choose the candidate who can win and perform in office. Thank you for your interest in this critically important race.
Mayor?
Well, Jason, thank you so much for moderating. Ira, Denton together, Nathan, thank you for this debate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for attending. We know what's on the line. And what's on the line is nothing short of the future of our state and our country. What's on the line is, who is Texas for? And who do our elected leaders work for? What's at stake is, who among us gets to live a good life? And by that I mean, who gets to have a good job and a good wage paid for your labor so that you can afford a good home and go sleep at night and wake up refreshed so you can take your children to a good school, confident that they will survive the day's classes? And who among us gets to speak freely? Who among us gets to vote? And who gets to have their vote counted? Denton together, I am telling you, it's all on the line. Our communities, our families, our values, our freedoms. And we know how we got here, right? The governor, the lieutenant governor, and above all, the attorney general, they sold us out to Donald Trump and his helpers. And that includes the majority Republican legislators who enable them. Now, I hope you have seen a contrast this evening about what it's going to take to get a fighter in the Attorney General's office who will not look away from conflict. My entire 35-year legal career and my time as a public servant, which lasted 8 years in Galveston, all show that I am your fighter. And above all, remember this: I will never lie to you. I can't be bought, and I have your back. Thank you.
Mayor, Senator, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Jason, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nathan, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to hand it over here to Ira. Stand by just a moment. We're gonna flip the stage here, and then we'll have the congressman out in just a second here. I think Mayor Cornelius is coming out in just a moment from Little Elm.
Hey, everybody, what'd you think so far? Interesting? It's better than watching it on TV. So here's what we're going to do. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to switch out the stage for Jason's conversation with Congressman Colin Allred. In the meantime, I'm going to invite a good friend of mine and the mayor of Little Elm to come out, and he's going to just talk with you guys about the importance of local elections, why it is important, maybe why you came here. He will take some questions from the audience, so be thinking about what you might want to ask him. But for now, give a big UNT and Denton County welcome to the mayor of Little Elm, Texas, Mr. Curtis Cornelius.
Well, good evening, everyone. No. Good evening, everyone. Okay, I mean, we're here, so we may as well have fun, right? Right? All right, it only makes sense. So, as Ira said, I am the mayor, proud mayor of Little Elm, Texas, Curtis J. Cornelius, the first, the best, and I thank myself for stepping up sometimes. Because sometimes you got to thank yourself because won't nobody else thank you. So just tell yourself thank you and pat yourselves on the back. Everybody feeling good today? Y'all heard good words? Heard from all the candidates? Got your selections made up? Really doesn't matter as long as you pick somebody from this stage, right? That way we can't get in trouble, right? Or we can't stay in trouble. Somebody on this stage will get us out of trouble, right? So I'm here, they asked me to do karaoke, sing or dance until whatever's going on behind the curtains is complete, and then somebody will come out and ring a bell and say, your time is done, Mr. Mayor. Perfectly fine with that. But I think what I'll do is, because this is about getting the votes out and seeing what we can do to excite one another, seeing what we can do to support one another, seeing what we can do to help one another. So I will take a few questions, and if I can't answer the questions, I'll find somebody in the audience that I know can, okay? All right, so we all understand what Denton Together does, correct? We all understand what Denton Together does, correct? Okay, that was the first question. It was an easy one, easy. So we're here to support the candidates, hear from the candidates. And from what I've done over the last umpteen years, I started off, I moved to Little Elm in 2002. Immediately got involved, 2004. I immediately got involved just volunteering. And I'm giving you a pathway for those of you that's thinking about running, just to let you know how I did it. So 2004, first thing I did, got to Little Elm, Texas, started coaching youth sports. Along with youth sports, got involved in the churches. Along with getting involved in the churches, start volunteering. That's when you start seeing actually what's going on in whatever town, city, or municipality you're in. I'm the type of person, if I see something I think I can help with, I don't just sit back and talk about it, I try to get involved. So this is why we're here, to get involved. So whether that be stepping up to be on a commission board, whether it be volunteer, just so the people that work, all the staff in the municipality knows exactly who you are, because that's what you want. You want people to know who you are, so when you do file to run, you're just not a random person that nobody knows. So the only way around that is you got to get involved. Once I got involved, tell you a short story how I became a town council member. So my wife, her family, mom and dad, 30 plus years in local government. Dad, city councilman in Arkansas, 37 years. Mom was justice of the peace. That was my wife's side of the family. Had nothing to do with Curtis. I'd never thought about politics at all. And that's just me being honest. So the way Little Elm used to do it, all openings used to come in the water bill. So that's how you knew everything that was going on. So that was our social media back in the day. You had to read your water bill to see what was open. Came in, my wife said, hey, there's a town council seat available. I was like, yes, go for it. I said, this is in your DNA. I support you all the way. Let's go. She said, I said, what do you mean, She said, I want you to do it. I said, I have no idea anything about politics. I had no idea. I didn't want to be involved in politics. I'd seen enough on TV that just wasn't for me, I thought. So let's see, that was in 07, 08, and this is 2025. So that goes to show I listen to my wife. She never directs me wrong. and she always supports me through it all. So, being in my second term as mayor in the wonderful city of Little Lamb, some say city, some say town, guess what? It's all about branding. It has nothing to do with population. It's all about branding. You want to say you're a city, you're a city. You want to say you're a town, you're a town. Who cares? I get that question more than I get, when do you become a city? At 50,000, guess what? We surpassed 50,000 a long time ago. Give you scale. In 2000, we were 3,200 people, and that was in year 2000. And we are 69,000 people today. So if you think you're living in one of these little secluded areas in Denton County and there's nothing coming, stay tuned. Because I felt the same way. I was like, oh, I can be a council member. There's only a few thousand people I got to know and shake hands. Yeah, I had hair too. I had hair. But one thing we did is once we hit the ground, we figured out what was going on, and now it was time to mobilize. So in my mobilization efforts, I met Ira years ago. Ira came in, I probably was one of me and Brandon was probably the first two people he met. He said, man, I want to do this thing called Denton Together. I was like, hey, it says together, I'm with it. Let's figure out what's going on. Sat down, we put the puzzle pieces together. We figured out how to mobilize people. And it was all about making people feel they were a part of something positive. I get to this day so much negative flack on being a part of Denton Together. Because everybody think Denton Together is this pack that's about 10,000, I think the last time I heard somebody said it's 10,000 people just throwing money at you and telling you what to do. Guess what? Denton Together has never asked me to do nothing that I wouldn't do on my own. The only thing Ira charged me with is being a good person. And that is the simplest thing anybody can ever ask you to do. And I already knew how to be a good person, so it didn't matter to me. But we figured out a way to increase voter turnout. Just got some stats the other day from this past election. Denton County went from about a 12% voter turnout to about 19, almost 20%. So give yourselves a hand clap. So as we break those numbers down and we try to figure out who's doing what, my town in Little Elm, we are in Texas. Everybody say Texas is the reddest state you can ever see in life. Parts of it. There are parts that we have moved the needle, and it's moving the needle the right way. That's educating people. That's asking people, what do you see? What do you want to see in local politics, in state politics, everywhere? What do you want to see? And people always say, we just want somebody that won't lie to us, somebody that'll show up, and somebody that'll educate us on what's going on and not try to just muddy the waters so nobody votes. That's a lot of what we're dealing with now. You turn the TV on, and depending on what channel you watch, you have no clue what's going on. You can listen to this channel and then turn it to this channel, and you just make no sense of it. And it's time out for that. I believe in supporting Denton Together because I have all of the people in Denton Together on speed dial. All 10,000 of them that helped me get in office. And the truth be told, it's probably about 5 of them. And it's 5 solid people that believe in pouring into a candidate, educating that candidate, and showing that candidate how it can be done the right way. And it's all about, let's just do this right. I sleep very well at night because I hadn't lied to someone, because that's something extra I have to try to remember. And the older I get, I figure out it's just not there. We figure out how to show people how things can be done. And they can be easily done the right way if you have a support system. So Denton Together came in at a very, very, very critical time. I was in a runoff. I ended up being in a runoff over 6 votes. So the next time somebody tell you my vote doesn't count, the lies you tell. So over 6 votes, I just had to start all over. And anybody that been in a runoff, you basically starting from scratch. Not only was it a runoff over 6 votes, I just lost my dad. So now I'm in a runoff, just lost my dad, just lost my mother-in-law a few months ago. I have nothing left in me to go. Nothing. But I knew I needed to stay the course. And I did just that, but now I had exalted everything. That's when Then Together came in, Jordan came in, and we just put together a massive runoff election that we showed up and we showed out. That goes to show you, when you support a candidate, a good candidate, we don't only need you, but you need them. It's like a match made in heaven, and it works so well when everybody is shooting at the same target. Oh, they said I got one more dance. So I want to take a few questions from the audience. What questions do you have about my path, about my experience with Denton Together, my experience with anything? Shoot it out. Let's hear it. Yes, sir.
So we could ask, and this would have been a great question for the other candidates, but we can ask, what's your position on public safety? What's your position on infrastructure? What's your position on business development? What I want to ask all of our candidates are, what values that are important to you help you do your job and weigh in on every decision that you make?
That's a great question. So my values are do the right thing against all odds. And when you sit in these seats, it's easy to feel like your idea is the best idea. But you have staff, you have directors, you have chiefs, you have an entire department that you have to trust to bring you the information that you need to make the best decision. I know myself, I'll always make the right decision. And that's a value I hold close to my heart that I don't believe elected officials really pour enough into these days. Like I say, I want to be able to go to sleep at night. And if I know I hadn't done the right thing, I'll toss and I'll turn. So to avoid all that, my value is just do the right thing. It's the easiest thing to do. It may not be the most popular thing to do, but it's the easiest thing to do. So that's the value I hold so dear to my heart. And the people around me know how I move, they know how I act, and they appreciate that. Every time you see me, you're gonna get the same thing. I have a lot of energy, I have the truth, I like to touch people, I like to look you in your eyes, so you know I'm telling you the truth and you don't have to question anything I said, which I don't have a problem if you do, but that's how I carry myself. So if you're running for something, people will see if you're not truthful. They'll see if you're just telling them what they want to hear, and they will not vote for you. They'll smile in your face and go right in there and hit the next ticket if they don't feel like you have a value that will carry you over. Thank you. Another question?
How do you battle nonpartisan, like nonpartisan citizens?
Whew. That's that. When I tell you that's a battle that most of us deal with a lot. But to answer it, there's a balance, but you have to be careful. I know exactly what party I believe in. He was asking in my seat, how do I balance partisanship? Because my seat, it's nonpartisan. But in my seat, I probably get more partisan demands or requests than most. That goes back to your value. I know I have to do the right thing, and I tell people, there is no Democratic or Republican way to fix that pothole. It's just not. I've looked at it. I've said, okay, if I fix it as a Democrat, it'll look like this. If you fix it as a Republican, it'll look like this. Guess what? The pothole got fixed. And that's the end. That's what you have. That's how you have to think about it. So I don't allow people to pull me this way or pull me this way, but you got to know who you are to deal with that balance. Great question. Wrapping up, are you going to let me sing my last song? Nah, I'm not going to sing so. So I have officially done my part. Thank you all for allowing me to come up. And Ira and everyone, thank you for having me. It's Debbie. I was just getting ready to dance.
I'm sorry, man. We could listen to him all afternoon, I tell you. Isn't he great? As good a speaker as he is, he's an even better mayor. So we're so proud of him. And without further ado, I would like to bring back Jason Whiteley of WFAA and introduce to you Congressman Colin Allred. Give it up. Colin asked.
Use these mics, all right. Test.
Test.
All right.
All right.
Congressman, good to see you. Thanks
Yeah,
for
good to see you all.
being here in Denton with us here this afternoon. We appreciate that. We had you on the program Inside Texas Politics, it was probably about a month ago, and one thing you told me right out of the gate that really stuck with me is you said you feel kind of liberated for this campaign, feel like you can be more of yourself. Can you tell us what concrete changes in your campaign, in your message that you're employing right now that you didn't do 2 years ago and last year?
Well, I think it's partly just that we don't have a presidential election going on. There's not like the concern. It's something you might do, might impact the presidential, So you're running your own race and you don't have that. But I think it's always hard to tell your story and to do it in a way that might, for example, like with my mom, leave her thinking, maybe we shouldn't tell the whole story, right? Because one of the things I wanted to do was talk about what we went through, being raised by a single mother, but then also that I found out when I was in college that my father had died when I was 10 years old, that he suffered from alcoholism, that he really struggled after his college football career, and that's something that a lot of people have gone through themselves, right? And that what I see out there is that a lot of what folks are going through right now in terms of affordability and feeling like they're working harder and harder but can't get ahead, that's exactly how I think we felt when I was growing up. And so I wanted to lean more into that and talk more about that and also go directly to working people instead of asking them to come to me. Because my mom could not have gone to a political rally in the evening. She didn't have 2 hours to do that. She was teaching during the day in DISD. She would do tutoring, and then she'd have to watch me. And so I'm constantly thinking about folks like my mom and how can we go to them. And so that's why I've been picking up shifts and working in restaurants, on construction sites, at Kroger in Houston. And while I'm there, I'm talking to the folks about what's going on in their lives. I'm talking to the people who are coming in and having these authentic conversations that to me are the best ones that I've had in my experience running for office. And I'll tell you just one story. I was at a Kroger in Houston, and if you ever go to Kroger and you buy one of those cakes, somebody's making that cake every day, right? And they're in the bakery there, and there was an older black woman, and she's an expert at making like the little flowers that go on the cake. She had one of the like wooden dowels that she would spin, and she'd have a little piping bag, and she'd just pipe it and spin, and she'd make a rose in like 5 seconds. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And of course, I butchered it. And I'm thinking, this is really skilled work, right? Like,
Did you buy the cake? Did you buy the cake?
I didn't buy the cake because I'm trying to keep my weight down. But and I was asking her, I was like, what's your day like? What did you do before this? What are you gonna do after this? And she's like, well, I have my grandson in the morning. I take him to school. Then I come here and I work until about 3 o'clock. Then I'm gonna go pick him up. And I'm gonna watch him until his mother gets off work. and then we're going to, rinse and repeat. And she was, around retirement age, and I was like, so have you thought about, when you're going to retire? And she's like, oh, no, I don't think that's something we can do right now. And she's saying, well, we just got to get him through this part of his life, and then maybe I can think about that, right? And she's coming in, she's working 6 days a week. She's at a point in her life where I'm sure she'd like to be able to retire, but she can't. She's doing something that's really valuable. And I wanted to go talk to her about what's going on in her life and say, okay, how can we help you, your daughter, and your grandson have a better chance to get ahead? Because I know what they're going through, and I know what policies we need to do to try and address it. So that's what I'm trying to do in this campaign.
Well, we all watched your campaign against Ted Cruz last year. Democratic voters across the state know you. Why should they consider you again?
Well, I think we've built a relationship with working people that I'm really proud of. And whenever I go, I have these interactions. People ask me about my kids and about my wife. Like, they know my story, and they know, I think, why I'm running. And when you outperform in an election, by nearly 6 points, and you do it by the most votes of any Senate race in the country, you say, okay, well, we can build on that, and maybe in a better year, doing some things differently. But I did not want to just run things back. And that's why, held town halls all around the country, all around the state, but also, what I've really enjoyed, like I said, is going to these work sites and then going to high school football games. I was at one on Friday night, going to college, homecomings, everywhere I can where I can go directly to people and have these direct conversations. Because I think that's the issue that we've had, I think, is that in many cases, the Democratic Party was seen as being too disconnected, too elite, not enough like on the ground talking to working people. The thing that bothered me the most in the last election at the presidential level, at least, was that Donald Trump won voters who earn less than $50,000 a year. That's a problem, right? And that's also the same group that I come from, right? And so I wanted to make sure that we address that, and that to win this election, we have to build a broad and diverse coalition, but it also has to include and be responsive to what working people are going through right now. And that's what I've been talking about nonstop, about affordability, how we can lower your healthcare costs, your housing costs, your childcare costs. And it's personal. Like I talk about how when it comes to housing, one of my planks is helping with down payment assistance for folks who want to buy a home. I talk about that because that's exactly what my mom and I went through. She could afford a mortgage. She rented a house for 20 years in Dallas so she could send me to a good school. She could afford a mortgage. She could never put away enough money for a down payment. It wasn't until I was in the NFL that I could help her buy that house that she rented for 20 years, and she's still living in it at Hillcrest and Beltline. But I helped her buy it when I was in the NFL because I could help her with the down payment. So that's why one of my policy planks is we need to help with down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, right? It's personal. I'm not reading about it. I'm remembering it, right? And so I feel like that allows me to speak to some of these issues that folks are going through right now with an authenticity, but then also to have a response to it, like an actual policy that will help you, not just in saying, I hear you, but this is what we're going to do to fix it. And because I've been in Congress, I know how to do these things. As you know, Jason, I was the most bipartisan Texan in Congress. It wasn't because I just agreed with my Republican colleagues on everything. It's because I was trying to get things done. And to actually deliver on these things, you have to have that experience, that ability to do it.
Well, you have a primary challenger, and just so you guys know, State Rep Tallarico was invited here today. He couldn't make it work, so Congressman Allred is going to get the entire time today for that conversation. But let's talk about policy for a moment here, Congressman. What should voters know about the difference between you and James Tallarico when it comes to policy? What does he stand for you disagree with, and vice versa?
Well, listen, I'm not following enough to say, okay, these are the policy things. I know what I'm running on, right? And I know what I have worked on. And I also know that I've worked on it in Congress, and I know what's rigged in this system that has to be unrigged. And I feel really strongly that the Congress itself is broken. That there's all the good ideas we might have cannot become law or be responsive to the moment unless we fix the broken Congress. And it has led to an out-of-control presidency and administration because they've ceded all of their power to the administration. That's not just because it's a Republican Congress, it's because the Congress itself doesn't function anymore. And so I know what we have to do to address that so we can unrig that, so we can unrig the entire system. And to me, there's a few simple things. I mean, gerrymandering, I was a voting rights lawyer, as you know, Jason, before I ran for Congress. Gerrymandering has a lot of problems. It's suppressive of the vote, it divides communities up. But the biggest issue that I saw with it in Congress is that it's broken the House of Representatives. It's broken it. And when you have districts like these that they've put together, the district that I represented doesn't exist anymore under this current map. It goes all the way out from North Dallas all the way out to Upshur County. I had to write a book report, or a report on Upshur County in 7th grade, because we have Texas history in 7th grade. I had to do it so I love Upshur County, but trust me, they have different needs than Dallas County does. They need to have a different member of Congress, right? But when you have these gerrymandered districts, what you produce is elected officials who are only interested in appealing to a limited segment of the electorate in their primary. Then they get to DC and they just act a fool. And they're not there to get anything done. Why should they? That's not the incentive structure they have set up. And so that's why you go 3 weeks without a speaker like it did in the last Congress. They've been in session for 10 days out of the last 100. They're not even working. They're not even working, right? They won't even swear in this woman who got elected in Arizona. Obviously, they're afraid of stuff like the Epstein's files, but that's not it. That's not the only thing, right? But when you look at the Senate, we can't pass any legislation. We passed all kinds of good bills out of the House that we couldn't get through the Senate, even though we had a majority in the Senate that wanted to vote for it. The filibuster is broken. The way it's been applied is ahistorical. For most of our history, the filibuster was only used very sparingly, and when it was used, you had to get up and talk. You object? Why do you object? Tell us why you object. Stand there and say it. Say it for a few weeks if you have to. That's what they used to do when we tried to pass civil rights legislation. They'd stand there for weeks. But now all you gotta do is say, I object. And then the bill doesn't pass. And then everybody's sitting here like, why can't they get anything done? It's because it's set up not to get anything done. And then you know what you do? You cede all of that power. Article 1 of the Constitution deals with the Congress. Article 2 is the presidency. I think the founders did that on purpose, right? But you cede all of that congressional power then to the executive. And then when you have a president come along who doesn't give a damn about the law, then they just take over everything. The tariff power is not a presidential power. It's a congressional power. The power to spend appropriated funds is not a presidential power. It's a congressional power. The power to declare war and to end war is not a presidential power. It's a congressional power. But if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And so I know what we have to do to fix these broken systems in the Congress, including, don't get me started on campaign finance, so that then we can address these policies that I know that have to be done. And with the best will in the world, if you don't know how to fix that, you won't get to those policies.
I want to ask you about more about the Senate and specifically the shutdown in just a moment here, but let me stick with politics and your primary opponent for a moment. Folks here in the room may have seen online the poll that he released recently that says for the first time that he has surpassed you. What do you make of that poll? It's his own internal polls from Impact Research. Are you concerned about vulnerabilities at all at this stage in the campaign?
You know, I don't really follow that kind of stuff because I've seen you can manipulate polls. Also, polls have been so wrong in so many elections recently. What I really am most interested in is the general election. And I know in every poll, I'm the strongest general election candidate. And I know what it takes to win in a general election. And I'm not, I've won tough races here in North Texas, as you know that you've covered, outperformed in a tough race. And I know what the opportunity that we have here is, right? And I think we should keep our focus on that. And I think Democratic voters will make their own decision. There's plenty of time to get into some of these things. But the biggest concern that I have and the focus that I have is making sure that we have a qualified and battle-tested candidate to win what is a winnable seat next November. Because they're gonna do what they did in the last election too, which is spend upwards of $125 million trying to hang on to the Senate seat. And if you can't stand up to that withering glare, then you're gonna blow an opportunity for us. I've already been through that and come through it just fine. They don't have anything to say about me because there's nothing to say, but also because when battle tested, we've been through these tough races over the years and you've covered them, sure. Right? And so, that's what my focus always is on. I'm built for winning and running in tough races in the general election. That's what I'm gonna continue to do.
Let's talk about the shutdown here for a moment. Obviously, we've all seen the headlines. It's affecting SNAP benefits right now, air travel, veteran services, which you care so much about and have passed things in Congress for too. Question is, with it really hitting Main Street now, is it time for Democrats to figure this thing out, to negotiate an end to this?
It is time for it to end. It's been past time for it to end. But I don't think it's the Democrats won't negotiate. I think it's that the Republicans won't negotiate. And I'm not like the homer. Like I would say that like I think this is the wrong thing to be doing. But if you want someone's vote, that's what they're asking for, in the Senate. If you want someone's vote, you have to give them a reason to vote for a bill. They have to have something that they're doing, that they're going to get out of that bill, and not just say, okay, you can do whatever you want, and we're not going to take a stand on anything. The fact is that we have 4 million Texans who are on the Affordable Care Act exchanges. 4 million Texans. They're going to see, and they already are seeing, their premiums go up by upwards of 30%. When we already are in the midst of an affordability crisis, and we can fix it, we can do something about it. It's a very simple thing. In fact, it should be bipartisan. In fact, I think it will be. But the Republicans' position has been, oh no, we're not going to negotiate anything. You just have to vote for it and trust that we'll deal with this later. Based on what? While that's about as good a promise as when he said he wasn't going to touch the White House, and they knocked down the whole East Wing. So. It is time for it to end, though, and I want to be clear. Jason, you know me. Like the last shutdown that we had, I was handing out food at DFW Airport with the North Texas Food Bank to TSA agents coming off of work. Right? Just week before last, I took coffee and donuts to the TSA agents at Love Field because I know that they can't go a month without a paycheck. Most people can't. Most working people cannot go a month without a paycheck. My mom and I could not. Because if you miss that one bill, then you start getting fees and charges, and it starts doubling down, and all of a sudden you're in a hole. And it might take you years to get out, even if you get your back pay. Now interest is kicking in, and penalties are kicking in. It's a problem, and it's impacting working people. I mean, these are folks, who are the ones who, like my uncle worked at FDA, who you're scanning your food, making sure that it's not, that you're safe. My grandfather worked for the Customs Department, making sure that the goods coming across the border, that it's, there's not drugs in it. My mom was a teacher. I understand, like my family, we believe in public service, right? And I don't think that it's right to treat public servants this way. And so I was sworn in 2019 during what at that time was the longest shutdown in government history. And we introduced a bill, me and some of my classmates from that cycle, Alyssa Slotkin and some others, called the SEAS Act, the Shutdown to End All Shutdowns Act. And it was pretty simple. It was like, if during a shutdown, members of Congress shouldn't get paid, and I used to always pause my pay whenever we had shutdowns, but they shouldn't get paid, but also the administration officials shouldn't get paid. They shouldn't be able to go on luxury travel during a shutdown. They certainly shouldn't be buying new jets like they're doing, or trying to build a ballroom during a shutdown. So if you're going to have a shutdown, let's have the pain at least equal across the board, because the only people not getting paid is the working people, right? So, I hate this stuff, though. I mean, I find it, because if you believe that we have real work to be doing, and I worked in the Obama administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, if I was there now, I would be furloughed. But I was doing real work, keeping roofs over people's heads, making sure people weren't being discriminated against when they were pursuing housing. There's real work to be done. Like, it's not that, y'all know this. Like, we have things to do. So we got to get to it.
Well, let me ask you that. If you were in the Senate right now, what would you be doing?
I would
Because
start with a small group, and I always thought this was the best way to do it. We would start with small groups. We'd get 2 and 2 or 3 and 3 from each party, and we'd say, okay, what do you need, right? And then we start hashing it out. And then we try to take it to our leadership and say, hey, listen, I was talking with the Republicans, and I think that if we can do these things, that we can get this thing done, right? And of course, they don't always listen, but that to me is the right approach, is to start with a small group where you have some trust in each other. And this is part of why gerrymandering's so bad, because you get rid of many of the members who want to do this. But you have some trust in each other where you can have an honest conversation without the cameras on, without like the pressure, and to say, okay, we all know that we need to get this moving. What do we need? And so that's what I would be doing right now. I'd be trying to be part of a gang of 6 or a gang of 8 to see what we can do to hammer this out.
And you did that in your time in the House, and we've talked a lot about that on our program. You're well known for that, your bipartisanship there. Let me ask you something I haven't asked you before. You've kind of mentioned the work you've done when you were in Congress that you're proud of, the veteran work, the Garland VA. Which votes do you most regret in D.C.?
I mean, I think I have to go through it because there's so many, but what I always regretted was when I felt like if I was just doing something, which I didn't do very often, because this is what the party was doing. That doesn't make me feel like I'm doing my job. I always, on every piece of legislation, and my staff would know this, they would know when you bring the recommendation to me, do not list, just what the party thinks. List what it's going to do for my district. Like, that's what I want to know. We will talk about the partisan stuff after I know what the bill does, right? And then we can get to, okay, well, what's the dynamics, But I never wanted to be a part of the problem. And I think there were times, where some things gathered momentum and you have things happen that I didn't think should have happened. And, I look back on it and I think, what I want to try and do in office always is to be able to defend whatever I did to the folks who elected me and to give you a detailed answer on why I voted on this piece of legislation. And I don't think it's a good enough answer to say, well, the whole party was doing it. To me, that's not a good enough answer. And I think that there's some legislation that I worked on that we passed that we couldn't get through the Senate that I particularly think we should have broken into smaller pieces so that we could pass it and just get that through, even if we couldn't get the whole package. And I regret not fighting harder for some of those, particularly on voting rights. So we had the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act, and we passed it out of the House, and it went to the Senate. It had 50 votes in the Senate, but we could not get past the filibuster. And it had a whole bunch of good stuff. It set national standards for early voting, for vote by mail. It was restoring the Voting Rights Act. It had things about polling places and locations, and it had a lot of good things in there. It had some campaign finance components as well. But what I think what we should have done is broken out a few of those things that are so common sense that everybody can get on board with it, and pass that and send that over. But the leadership often wanted to have the whole package, and I would rather. I don't want to have the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I look back on that and I think, no, what we need to be doing is take whatever we can get and then keep fighting and then keep fighting and then come back and do it again, right? And if we had been able to, I would ban gerrymandering as well, that bill. If we'd been able to pass some of those smaller components, we wouldn't have some of the issues that we're seeing now with the restrictions they're putting on the right to vote. And so I feel really strongly that we have to have productive Congresses. They have to pass significant and vital legislation, and that if we can't get the whole loaf, let's get a slice of bread, right? And that's the approach that I want to take now as well.
I think a lot of people would agree with that, Republican, Democrat, and everywhere else. We're actually out of time here, but I do want to give you a moment since you were able to join us today to tell the voters here what you believe in, why they should elect you in the March primary.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for being here. I know you got a lot of things you can do with your precious free time. And I've been telling folks this because my sons are kind of funny. Like I have 2 boys, they're 4 and 6, and they collect rocks and they bring them to me. And I have hundreds of rocks now. And they ask me to carry a rock with me everywhere I go for each one of them, right? So I have 2 rocks in my pocket right now. I don't know if y'all do any silly stuff like this with your kids. I can only reach one of them right now, but so I carry. This is just one of the 2 rocks, and I told them I carry these 2 rocks because every time I put my hand in my pocket, I want to think about you. Like even when I'm all around the state, even when I haven't seen you in a few days, I want you to know that Daddy's thinking about you, right? And that you're always with me, and you're also my motivation for why I'm doing this. Because when you're a father, you can't just leave the country like it is to your children. Like, we can't leave it to them like this. It's our responsibility to fix this. Where we are now, 40 days into the shutdown, with what I consider to be an out-of-control president, a Supreme Court that's completely off the rails, and a Congress that's completely forgotten its responsibilities is not sustainable. And I know what we have to do to fix this. And what it can't be, though, to me, is that it's just the Democratic Party for the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat, I'm proud of being one. But what we have to do is be for Texans. I watched the Republican primary, and they are running to impress one person, Donald Trump. That's it. You get John Cornyn's running ads right now saying, "Don't worry, I'm the biggest bootlicker there is." Right? Like 99% of the time I lick the boots, and it's like, bro, what would you do? He's only got 2 years left after this election. What would you do the next 4? Like, whose other boots are you gonna find? And then, Ken Paxton, his scandals have scandals. He can't go to a family reunion, much less the Senate. So, and like we need to beat these people, right? And I've been in tough races where there's millions and millions of dollars and all the scrutiny, right, to get in Congress. And the reward you get when you win a tough race is you get another tough race, right? It's like for the pie eating contest, the reward is you get more pie, right? And even the last election, overperforming in a tough cycle, right? And I know what we need to do, but I also know why I'm doing this. And I want y'all to do that as well. I want you to know what your 2 rocks are. Whatever it is that got you to come here today, that got you to decide to stand up in your democracy, that got you to think, you know what, I'm going to spend my free time being involved. Whatever that is, I want you to keep that in mind and don't lose it. Because it's easy to be cynical in this time. I mean, this is the most cynical time I've ever seen. But we don't have to. We don't have to give in to it. And so my encouragement to you is just to remember your 2 rocks. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. For the precinct chairs who I see here, for the people the elected officials, the people running for office, for the folks who are political science majors like I just met backstage. Remember why you're doing this, and that it wasn't just so that a party could do better, or so that you could have somebody talk about you the way you want them to talk about you, right? It was for your community, for your state, for your country, for your constitution, for who we are as a people, for where we're going, for what we can do, what we should be doing, what we're not doing. That's why you're doing this, right? So let's do it. And let's not give in to the cynicism, and let's make sure that when we stand up for our values that we're doing it in a way that includes everybody. Because we already got a party that only wants to impress one person. I want to impress 30 million. I want 30 million Texans to feel like when they wake up, they've got an elected official who cares about them. That's the biggest thing I hear from people, is that they think nobody cares. I do, you do, so let's make sure we show that in this election. And I hope to have your vote, of course, in the primary and the general. But the biggest thing is we got to remember who we are and why we're doing this. That we got to remember who we are. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Congressman Allred, thank you so much. There's Ira.
Everybody, thank you so much. How about a round of applause again for Congressman Colin Allred? And a big thank you to Jason Whiteley for helping us out today. I will leave you with just a couple of thoughts. Tomorrow in this room, his name's been invoked 20 times today. Ken Paxton is having a Turning Point USA event in this room. So what I would say to you is, you picked the right day to come. And thank you for that. Thank you to the electeds, to the candidates. Thank you. Huge shout out to my partner at Getting Together, Debbie O'Reilly, for helping me organize this. A big shout out to AJ Perez and the College Democrats of UNT. And finally, to the Attorney General candidates, Senator Nathan Johnson and Mayor Joe Jaworski. Finally, thank you. I always say this, thank you. I know you guys are engaged. We know you're engaged, but stay engaged and get more people to be engaged. You can donate, you can block walk, you can text. Minimally, you got to vote, but we need a lot of people. If we're going to start winning these races, which is the only goal, then let's start winning these races. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.